Hey everybody, Joey Boy here, the Joey you can trust, back with a Walking Dead Roast 5 video, featuring the 4th day of Buildmas. Welcome back to the 12 days of Buildmas, where I set some arbitrary date, which is subject to change, and I do 12 team comp builds with rosters from the community. Team comps, weapons, and combat mods will be talked about, and some tactics and strategies to the team. Let's begin. On the 4th day of Buildmas, the community gave me 4 rosters to look at, 3 of them free to play, 2 are only left, then it's time to make some Dolphiness teams. This roster display will be from the one and only King Blurryface, as that is an extremely unique name, and going over King Blurryface's roster, I will be putting together 2 attack teams and 1 defense team. King Blurryface is a free-to-play user, so you may see some similar survivors in this roster that you may find in your own. First attack team we're going to be dealing with is we're going to be using this against human shield teams, very timeout-based teams here. Since we do want to make a team that is going to be going up against range, which is going to be blue and reds, so ideally we're going to probably want to bring yellow and blues for straight up trait counters, so we're going to bring in Javier as our leader. Granted, he does not have a 40% attack leadership skill, but his buff giving 100% attack will make up for that. Also as well, since we're going to be raising our attack, if we want to make sure we can easily kill the enemy, we also want to make sure we can defense down them as well. For that, we will be bringing Spencer. The defense down and stun will do wonders for this team. Since we are also dealing with human shield teams, having Kate for her adrenaline rush that we can use turn 2 to apply focus to the entire team, a heal, and an attack buff for now, until we can use Javier's attack buff on our main damage dealers. This will help us out tremendously come turn 2. As for the last spot as well, since Spencer can lower defenses to more than one enemy, we want to bring in somebody that can evolve throughout the fight and AR more than one person, just so we can hit all the enemy survivors that have a defense down. To do this, we are going to be bringing in Eris. She has a taunt active for AR control, and a stun to 3 adrenaline rush with some self-sustain as well. If anybody happens to die throughout the fight, and Javier applies his attack buff, and Spencer lowers defenses, we can almost guarantee that Eris is going to slaughter whoever she attacks. As for weapons on this team, we're going to be going very offensive with Javier, Eris, and Spencer. By bringing in an attack, AP when attacking, and an absolute defense for Javier and Eris, and a double attack weapon for Spencer. The defensive side of this team will be Sadiq, because he's not really going to be attacking too much, because Sadiq is only going to be commanding our survivors for the added pressure. Kate, we're also going to be building her tanky, as she is a 5-star, and in the 6-star era, her stats are going to be extremely low. So we're going to do this to keep her alive, so we can get her adrenaline rush popping turn 2, so then we can start avoiding any human shields, and start taking out any revivers or damage dealers on the enemy team. We will also be placing Impair when taking damage on Sadiq, and Kate, for further survivability, we will be giving her absolute defense. As for the combat mod side of things here, Javier, Eris, and Spencer will all be given offensive combat mods, while Sadiq and Kate will be given defensive combat mods for their sets. As for the individual combat mods themselves, anybody that we wanted to forcefully be offensive, we're going to be giving them attack combat mods and attack first traits, because we need to add a lot of pressure to the enemy team so we can actually score a win. Lackluster offensive power will usually result in a loss for your team, or battles will start taking longer than you want them to last. Which, in a war scenario where time is key, you pretty much will always be going bankrupt when competition really starts to fire up. As for the resist combat mod, we're going to go stun resist, as we're going to be dealing with red survivors, so stun guns will be a thing on here. We're going to go with AP down on Javier. If we put AP down on somebody that's not going to hit as hard, such as Javier, he's a support character, even though we are building him offensive, he still won't hit as hard as, let's say, Spencer. So, one of our lightest hitters will be applying the AP down, which will give us a bigger reduction in AP when it does proc. We're going to place Burn on Sadiq because he will basic attack the first turn, and then on the second and third turn, he will more than likely be commanding other survivors, giving him the basic attack once every 3 turns. As for Eris, we're going to go attack first blue and attack first red, and attack while impaired. Due to once Eris starts getting some stacks of hold the line, and if she happens to get impaired, and also gets a Javier buff as well, this is a lot of attack buffs that are stacking to the point where she pretty much will start one-shotting people on basic attacks, especially if she's hitting a blue survivor. Second attack team, we're going to be taking a more melee-esque approach. You can use this team against mainly green teams, mainly yellow teams, or a mixture in between. A huge strength of this team will come through its stun weapons on basic attacks. To make sure we can apply some offensive pressure with using a melee team, we're going to be using Green Apes and Ham for our leader. Now to apply more single target burst with a very nice single target crowd control active and a crowd control to 2 for 2 turns, when she Adrenaline Rushes, we are going to be bringing in 2 Shivas. 2 Shivas, when you're attacking, gives you an enormous amount of control over the fight. Even versus the tankiest Human Shield Revive teams, it may take you a little bit of time, but 2 Shivas sometimes is more than enough to take the enemy team out. To help our Shivas, make sure that whenever they AR, they will kill somebody to then apply the Confuse to 2 to 2 other survivors. We are going to want to bring in Sandy. Sandy will bring in an Impair active for the case that we are going up against teams that have a heavy stun resist. With Sandy, lowering defenses will allow the team to get kills a lot faster. With Sandy lowering defenses, not only will basic attacks chew through the enemy, but Adrenaline Rushes will almost certainly result in a kill. Now for the final spot that's going to make this team work out extremely well. We're going to be bringing in Carl. Not only is his sustain going to keep the team in the fight, along with Abraham's sustain as well, with Pain Split, but Carl has an AP gain active. So what you're going to do with this team is come turn 1, everybody attacks. Turn 2, the 2 people that you want to Adrenaline Rush turn 3, you're going to want them to attack first. Then you're going to use Carl's active for AP gain. The AP gain is going to go towards the 2 people that have the most AP. So if you're using Shiva, who has a 66 AR, and she's currently at 60 AP after attacking turn 2, when Carl uses his AP gain, Shiva will be ready to Adrenaline Rush turn 3. Now for someone that has 76 AP, such as Sandy, if you wanted to use Sandy turn 3 and then follow up with Shivas and basic attacks afterwards, Sandy will be at 60 AP after her second attack. 20% of 76 AP is 15.2, which will round up to 16, giving her 76 AP. So now you're in a position, unless you were crowd controlled, to have 2 Survivor Adrenaline Rushes go off turn 3 without a command. As for weapons with this team, we are going to be focused mainly on being purely offensive. We're going to be going attack, AP when attacking, and stun on attack for everybody except Carl. Sandy, instead of getting stun on attack, we're going to give her absolute defense. Having 4 stun on attack weapons will give your team plenty of crowd control for whoever you're trying to finger blast down, so they do not use their Adrenaline Rush after taking loads of damage and they end up not dying. As for the combat mods, we're taking the same approach. All attack sets for everybody except Carl, in which we're going to give him a defense set. As for the individual combat mods themselves, they will all be more geared towards attacking and doing damage versus their trait advantages. Since this team can be used against yellow and greens, for the sake that if we go up against a heavy green team, we're going to want to bring stun resist as our resist mod. Since we are not using any decapitates, and we want to apply more damage pressure, we're going to be taking 4 bleeds and 1 burn. Carl is going to get the burn because we're going to be using his active fairly often. With 4 bleeds stacking, you should be getting anywhere around at least 400 damage from bleeds per turn. Combine that with a burn that should give somewhere around, hopefully, 150 to 200 damage, can give you roughly 600 damage per turn. Combine this with a team that can do extreme amounts of crowd control to the point where the enemy isn't even in control of their team anymore, will benefit this attack team severely. This defense team here is something that I have personally went up against in my own region, as the #1 guy in our region rocked this defense team, or something extremely similar, maybe a 1 survivor difference, but it was extremely hard to beat, considering what I was coming to the table with, and during that time of the region where there wasn't a whole lot of highly offensive survivors out there, which made this team extremely hard to beat. Because once one thing goes wrong, a GG, because you're not going to be able to control your team at all. So, we're going to go with a melee defense team, and we're going to bringing in Carl for the leader. Now, if there's one thing that we can do, is if we can apply major amounts of crowd control and burst damage to a defensive team, to the point where it can take control fairly easy from a turn 1 basis with stun on attack weapons, this team can actually be very efficient. So, we're going to be bringing in 3 duplicates to this team. All 3 of them are going to be Shiva. Now, if there is not a Shiva dead by the time Adrenaline Rushes start popping off, I feel extremely bad for your team, because you're probably going to get mauled to death, and it's not going to feel good. And the chance you have all Shivas with stun claws, and they happen to land 1 or 2 stuns, turn 1, it is already looking in your favor, especially if the enemy team does not bring a recover stun. Because like I said before, once the Shivas start Adrenaline Rushing, it pretty much is game over, as the confuse that they're going to land It's going to last for 2 turns, and there's 3 Shivas that are going to be popping adrenaline rushes off non-stop. To also help the Shivas survive even longer, we will be bringing in Guardian 2 Zeke, so that every time that somebody wants to barrage a Shiva down, they have to sacrifice one person on their team to pop a shield, which gives a little bit of damage control for our Shivas. As for weapons with this team, it's going to be tanky, except for our Shivas, in which we're going to be leaving more offensive-based weapons on them, or their claws. Because seeing if we really wanted to make them defensive, it's a lot cheaper and it's a lot easier to alter the combat mods than really change her weapon up to make her fit a very specific S team. Because Shiva is naturally a damage dealer, we want to keep her a damage dealer. So if we want to make her tanky, then we can combine a tanky leadership skill and tanky combat mods to fill in that void for where she is very paper thin. As for Guardian 2 Zeke, we're going to be bringing a crit defense and absolute defense weapon, and for Carl, it's going to be a stun on attack weapon that is going to be tanky. As for the combat mod sets, all of them are wielding a defense set, and as for Guardian 2 Zeke, we're going to be stacking more defense with the defense combat mod, and for everybody else, we're going to be going HP. We're going to go defense first, their respected trait disadvantages. Stun resist for when they bring heavy amounts of greens to the team. We need to be prepared for stuns so we can fire back and stun them and confuse them, winning us the crowd control battle, thus which should win us the fight. For our Shivas, we're going to want to put Grays for more survivability, because once adrenaline rushes start popping off, the more Shivas we have alive, the better. We'll be going AP down on Carl and Zeke, as they are not going to be our heavy hitters, and since the Shivas are going to probably be the main focus, Carl and Zeke are not going to be hitting hard, so they won't generate a lot of AP, which will be better for when the AP down procs, because we will get more AP down than if it was somebody hitting extremely hard. As for the wildcard combat mods for this team, we're going to be going tanky with some resist mods. For our Shiva wildcard combat mods, we're going to go 2 with confuse resist, as since they do have stun claws, we do not want them stunning our own team. That will be a big kryptonite to our team, which will be confuse. So 2 of our Shivas, we are going to go with confuse resist. To make sure we have a Shiva that isn't so weak to where if a multi-adrenaline rush went off, we don't lose a bunch of Shivas, we're going to be placing a defense wildcard combat mod for one of our Shivas. Having a setup like this with a Guardian 2 Zeke, even in the case that if one of our Shivas does get confused, hopefully they attack somebody that has a Guardian shield on them, resulting in not stunning our own team. And that's going to wrap up the video of the 12 days of Buildmas. King Blurryface, I hope this is what you were looking for, and if it's not, we will go back to the drawing board and start making some new team comps, because I do think that there are probably some new survivors that came out that I have not been updated with, and then from there, we can start making better teams. As the game is ever and always evolving, so should we. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video and made you laugh or did anything positive, please get a nice karate chop the like, subscribe button, make sure you leave a comment down below. It's greatly appreciated, and on that, I'll catch you on the next video. Bye-bye!